February 23, 1945. Elsdorf, Germany. Staff Sergeant Clarence Smoyer peers through the periscope of his M4A3E8 Sherman tank as dawn breaks over the Rhineland. 300 yards ahead, partially concealed behind a destroyed farmhouse, sits the angular silhouette that every Allied tanker has learned to fear. A Tiger I-heavy tank, 70 tons of Krupp steel, an 80mm gun that can punch through his Sherman's armor at 2,000 yards. Against Smoyer's 76mm gun, the odds are brutally simple. In the previous 6 months of fighting across France and Germany, American Sherman tanks have faced German Tigers and Panthers in dozens of engagements. The statistics tell a grim story. For every Tiger destroyed, the Allies lose 5 Shermans, sometimes more. Tank crews call it death by mathematics. The Sherman's standard M62 armor-piercing shell simply cannot penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at combat ranges. Crews are told to flank, to wait for side shots, to call for air support. But flanking maneuvers cost time. Time costs lives. What Clarence Smoyer doesn't know, as he tracks that Tiger through his sight, is that the shells loaded in his ammunition rack aren't standard issue. His loader, Private First Class Homer Red Davis, has spent the previous 3 nights in a freezing maintenance depot, illegally modifying their ammunition with a technique that every ordnance officer in the European theater has explicitly forbidden. Davis has no engineering degree, no ballistics training, just a hunch based on something he observed during a firing range accident in December. The modification violates at least 4 Army regulations. If it fails, the resulting explosion could kill Smoyer's entire crew before the Tiger even fires. If it works, it will rewrite the tactical doctrine that has governed American armored warfare since 1942. Smoyer doesn't know any of this. He only knows what every Sherman commander knows. Engage a Tiger head-on, and you die. His finger rests on the firing trigger. The Tiger's turret begins to traverse toward his position. In 8 seconds, that 88mm gun will be aimed directly at his tank. He has no choice. Smoyer gives the order. Fire. The problem begins in July 1943, when American M4 Sherman tanks first encounter German Tiger the Ruhr, heavy tanks during Operation Husky in Sicily. The Sherman was designed in 1940 as a fast, reliable medium tank optimized for infantry support and exploitation. Its 75mm gun performs adequately against German Panzer IIIs and IVs. But the Tiger Remoer, introduced in August 1942, changes everything. With frontal armor up to 120mm thick and the legendary 80mm KWK-36 gun, the Tiger can destroy Shermans at ranges where the Sherman cannot even scratch its paint. The U.S. Army Ordnance Department recognizes the crisis. In September 1943, they rushed the 76mm gun into production, replacing the Sherman's original 75mm weapon. The new M62 armor-piercing shell shows promise in testing. Fired from the 76mm gun, it should penetrate 88 feet of armor at 1,000 yards. On paper, this gives Shermans a fighting chance. Combat results tell a different story. At the Battle of Ericourt in September 1944, American tank battalions equipped with 70mm Shermans engaged German Panther tanks at ranges of 800 to 1,200 yards. The M62 shells bounce off Panther frontal armor in engagement after engagement. After-action reports document Sherman crews firing 8, 10, sometimes 12 rounds at a single Panther before achieving a penetration. Meanwhile, German 75mm and 88mm guns destroy Shermans with their first shot, 73% of the time. The 3rd Armored Division loses 41 tanks in 3 days. The 4th Armored Division reports similar losses. Crews begin calling the Sherman a Ronson lighter, after the cigarette lighter company's advertising slogan, Lights first time, every time. The Ordnance Department tries everything. They develop the M93 hypervelocity armor-piercing shell with a tungsten core. It performs brilliantly in testing, penetrating 130 meters of armor at 1,000 yards. But tungsten is critically scarce, needed for machine tools and aircraft engines. Monthly production allocations allow only enough M93 rounds to supply 5% of Sherman tanks in the European theater. Engineers experiment with higher propellant charges, but these exceed the design limits of the Sherman's 76mm gun, causing barrel failures. They try larger caliber guns, but the 90mm weapon requires a complete turret redesign that won't be ready until 1946. They develop shaped charge rounds, but these prove unreliable at ranges beyond 400 yards. By December 1944, as American forces prepare to cross the Rhine into Germany itself, the consensus among armor experts is clear: the Sherman is outgunned. Lieutenant General Jacob Devers, commanding the 6th Army Group, writes in his operational assessment, "Our medium tanks cannot reliably engage German heavy armor at standard combat ranges. Crews must rely on numerical superiority, tactical positioning, and combined arms support." The stakes couldn't be higher. Intelligence estimates indicate that Germany has approximately 1,200 Tiger and Panther tanks defending the Rhine crossings and the approaches to the Ruhr industrial region. The U.S. Army has 8,400 Sherman tanks in Europe. The mathematics are brutal. If the 5-to-1 loss ratio continues, crossing the Rhine will cost the Allies more than 2,000 tanks and 10,000 tank crewmen killed or wounded. Every ordnance officer, every ballistics expert, every armor commander in the European theater is searching for a solution. They're looking in the wrong place. The answer won't come from an engineering laboratory or a proving ground. It will come from a 22-year-old high school dropout from Amarillo, Texas, who barely passed his tank gunnery course. Private First Class Homer Davis never intended to become a tank loader. Born in 1922, in Amarillo, Davis drops out of high school in his junior year to work at his father's automotive repair shop. He's good with his hands, decent at fixing carburetors and timing chains, but shows no particular aptitude for military service. When he's drafted in March 1943, his recruiter notes mechanical inclination on his enlistment papers, and the Army assigns him to Armored Forces. Davis barely passes basic training. His marksmanship scores are mediocre. His written tests place him in the bottom third of his class. His instructors describe him as adequate but unremarkable. He's assigned as a loader, the lowest ranking position in a tank crew, responsible for hauling 76mm shells from the ammunition rack and slamming them into the gun's breech. It's physically demanding work that requires no particular skill or intelligence. He arrives in France in September 1944, assigned to Company E, 32nd Armored Regiment, 3rd Armored Division. His tank commander is Staff Sergeant Clarence Smoyer, a veteran of the Normandy campaign who has survived 3 tank destructions and earned a Silver Star at Mortain. Davis's job is simple. When Smoyer calls for armor piercing, Davis loads armor piercing. When Smoyer calls for high explosive, Davis loads high explosive. Keep the gun fed. Stay alive. But Davis notices something during a training exercise on December 12, 1944, near Stolberg, Germany. A loader in another tank accidentally drops an M62 armor-piercing round. The shell's ballistic cap, the pointed metal cone that covers the shell's hardened penetrator, breaks off on impact with the ground. The crew discards the damaged round and loads a fresh one. Later that day, during live fire practice, a gunner accidentally fires the damaged round that was left beside the range. Davis watches through binoculars as the shell, now without its ballistic cap, strikes a knocked-out German Panther tank being used as a target. The shell penetrates, clean through the frontal armor at 900 yards. Davis mentions this to Smoyer that evening. Smoyer dismisses it as a lucky hit, probably struck a weak point in the already damaged armor. Davis can't shake the observation. Every ordnance manual, every training document emphasizes that the ballistic cap is essential for armor penetration. The cap is designed to prevent the penetrator from shattering on impact with sloped armor. Remove the cap, and the shell should perform worse, not better. But Davis saw what he saw. The capless shell penetrated. He begins reading everything he can find about armor-piercing ammunition design. He's not a trained engineer, and much of the technical material is beyond his understanding. But he develops a theory. Maybe the ballistic cap, designed to help penetration against sloped armor, actually hinders penetration against vertical armor by absorbing impact energy. Maybe, for the specific geometry of Tiger and Panther frontal plates, a bare penetrator would perform better. It's just a theory, from a loader with no credentials, against the collective expertise of the entire U.S. Army Ordnance Department. Davis decides to test it. On the night of December 18th, 1944, Homer Davis sneaks into the 32nd Regiment's ammunition depot outside Stolberg. The depot is a converted barn, guarded by a single-board private who knows Davis from the motor pool. Davis tells him he's checking inventory for his platoon sergeant. The guard waves him through. Inside, stacked on wooden pallets under flickering electric lights, sit thousands of 76mm shells, M62 armor-piercing, M42A1 high-explosive, M88 smoke rounds. Davis selects 20 M62 armor-piercing shells and carries them to a maintenance shed behind the depot. He's brought tools from his tank: a hammer, a cold chisel, a file, and a pair of heavy pliers. The work is crude but methodical. He uses the chisel to score a line around the base of each shell's ballistic cap, then carefully taps the cap with the hammer until it separates from the penetrator body. Some caps come off cleanly. Others require filing and prying. By 3 a.m., Davis has modified 15 shells. He hides them in empty ammunition crates marked "Damaged, Do Not Issue," and returns the tools to his tank. He tells no one, not even Smoyer. If he's caught, he'll face court-martial for destruction of government property and unauthorized modification of ordnance. The penalty could be 5 years in a military prison. The first test comes on December 21st during a combat patrol near Düren. Smoyer's tank encounters a German Panzer IV at 800 yards. Davis loads one of his modified shells without telling Smoyer what he's done. The gunner, Corporal John DeRiggi, fires. The shell strikes the Panzer's frontal armor and penetrates completely, detonating the ammunition inside. The Panzer explodes. Smoyer is pleased but not surprised. The Panzer IV has thinner armor than a Tiger. Even standard M62 rounds can penetrate it at that range. Davis says nothing. He needs a harder test. The opportunity comes on January the 9th, 1945. During an engagement near Sherman, Smoyer's platoon encounters a Panther tank at 100 yards. This is beyond the effective range of standard M62 ammunition against Panther frontal armor. Smoyer orders his crew to maneuver for a flank shot. Davis interrupts. "Load one of the special rounds, Sergeant." "What special rounds?" Davis explains what he's done. Smoyer stares at him in disbelief. "You did what?" "Davis, that is insane. You could blow us all to hell. Those caps are there for a reason." "Just one shot, Sergeant. If it doesn't work, we maneuver like always." Smoyer considers this for exactly 3 seconds. They're in combat. The Panther is turning its turret toward another American tank. He nods. Davis loads the modified shell. DeRiggi aims, fires. The shell strikes the Panther's frontal armor at the glacis plate, the most heavily armored section. It penetrates. The Panther shudders, smoke pouring from its hatches. The crew bails out. Smoyer keys his radio. Battalion, this is easy too. We need to talk to someone in ordnance right now. January 12th, 1945. 3rd Armored Division Headquarters, Kornelimünster, Germany. Major Robert Bellinger, the division's chief ordnance officer, listens to Homer Davis's explanation with increasing incredulity. Smoyer has brought Davis to headquarters to present his findings. Davis has brought 3 of his modified shells and a hand-drawn diagram attempting to explain his theory about ballistic caps and impact energy. Bellinger cuts him off after 2 minutes. Private, do you have any idea how much testing goes into ammunition design? We have engineers with advanced degrees from MIT and Caltech. We have proving grounds with instrumented test ranges. We have metallurgists who understand armor penetration physics at a level you cannot possibly comprehend. Davis tries to explain what he observed. Bellinger isn't interested. What you observed was a statistical anomaly, or a weak point in already damaged armor, or a dozen other factors. What you have not observed is the catastrophic gun barrel failure that will occur when your jury-rigged shells create pressure spikes beyond design specifications, or the crew deaths that will result when improperly modified ammunition detonates prematurely. He orders Davis to surrender all modified shells immediately. They will be destroyed. If Davis has modified any others, he is to report their location. And if Davis ever modifies ammunition again, Bellinger will personally see him court-martialed. Smoyer tries to intervene. Sir, with respect, we've fired these rounds in combat. They work. We penetrated a Panther at 1,100 yards, frontal armor. That shouldn't be possible with standard M62. Sergeant Smoyer, one lucky shot does not constitute valid test data. This discussion is over. But Smoyer refuses to let it drop. He goes over Bellinger's head, requesting a meeting with Colonel Leander Doan, commander of the 32nd Armored Regiment. Doan is a maverick officer, known for encouraging tactical innovation and ignoring regulations he considers counterproductive. He agrees to observe a controlled test. January 15th, 1945. A captured German Panther tank, knocked out during the Battle of the Bulge, has been transported to a firing range near Eupen. The Panther's frontal armor is intact, measuring 80 mm thick at the glacis plate, sloped at 55 degrees. This is the exact armor configuration that has proven nearly impervious to standard Sherman 76 mm fire at ranges beyond 600 yards. Bellinger attends, accompanied by 2 ordnance engineers from the division's technical section. He's confident this demonstration will end Davis's dangerous experimentation. The engineers have calculated that removing the ballistic cap should reduce penetration performance by approximately 30%. The test will prove this, and everyone can return to established procedures. Smoyer's tank is positioned at 1,000 yards. Davis loads a standard M62 round. DeRiggi fires. The shell strikes the glacis plate and ricochets, leaving only a gouge in the armor. No penetration. Davis loads a second standard round. Same result, a third. The shell penetrates, but only because it strikes a weak point near a weld seam. Now Davis loads one of his modified rounds, the ballistic cap removed. The room erupts. Bellinger steps forward. Absolutely not. Colonel, I must protest. This is unsafe. This violates every ordnance protocol we have. I cannot authorize this test. Doan holds up his hand. Major, I appreciate your concerns, but we're going to fire one round. If it fails, we'll destroy the rest and forget this ever happened. If it works, we're going to have a very interesting conversation with Army ground forces. Bellinger shakes his head, but steps back. DeRiggi aims, fires. The modified shell strikes the glacis plate at the same point where the previous standard rounds ricocheted. It penetrates, clean through. The shell exits through the Panther's rear armor, leaving a fist-sized hole. The engineers immediately demand to examine the target. They measure the penetration hole. They calculate the angle of impact. They examine the shell fragments. One engineer, Captain James Morton, turns to Bellinger. Sir, this shouldn't be possible. But the data is unambiguous. The modified round achieved full penetration at a range where standard rounds cannot. Doane makes his decision immediately. Major Bellinger, I want 50 tanks in this regiment, equipped with modified ammunition within 48 hours, and I want a full report sent to 12th Army Group. If this works at scale, it could change the entire campaign. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I am, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel brings you the untold stories of military innovation that changed history, and there's so much more coming. Now let's see what happened when Davis's modification went into full combat testing. The crash program begins on January 16, 1945. Colonel Doane authorizes modification of ammunition for 2 companies, approximately 50 tanks. Tank loaders across the 32nd Regiment spend the next 2 days carefully removing ballistic caps from M62 shells under Davis's supervision. The work is tedious and dangerous. One loader strikes a shell too hard, causing the propellant to ignite. He suffers second-degree burns, but survives. The modification process is refined. Score, tap gently, file smooth. Each modified shell is marked with a white paint stripe so gunners can identify it. Major Bellinger continues to object, sending daily reports to division headquarters warning of potential catastrophic failures. But Doane has the support of Major General Maurice Rose, commander of the 3rd Armored Division. Rose is desperate for any advantage against German heavy armor. He authorizes continued testing while forwarding technical data to Army Ground Forces headquarters in Paris. The first large-scale combat test occurs on February 23, 1945, during the drive toward the Rhine River. This is the engagement that opens our story. Staff Sergeant Clarence Smoyer's tank, call sign Easy 2, is advancing through the town of Elsdorf when his gunner spots a Tiger wine tank positioned behind a destroyed farmhouse at 300 yards. Standard doctrine says to call for artillery or air support. Tigers at close range are death traps, but Smoyer has 20 modified shells in his ammunition rack. He orders DeRiggy to aim for the Tiger's frontal armor, the glacis plate. Davis loads a modified round. DeRiggy fires. The shell strikes dead center, penetrates. The Tiger's ammunition detonates, blowing the turret 15 feet into the air. The Tiger's crew, Oberfeldwebel Klaus Müller, and 4 others, are killed instantly. Smoyer has no time to celebrate. His radio crackles with contact reports. 2 more Tigers are engaging American tanks on the eastern edge of Elsdorf. One Sherman is already burning. Smoyer orders his driver forward. At 11:23 a.m., Smoyer's tank rounds a corner and encounters a Tiger 1 at 450 yards. The Tiger's gun is traversing toward another Sherman. Smoyer doesn't wait for permission. Load modified. Fire when ready. Davis slams a white striped shell into the breech. DeRiggy fires. Penetration. The Tiger lurches to a stop, smoke pouring from its engine deck. The crew bails out. At 11:31 a.m., a 3rd Tiger appears, firing from a concealed position near a church. The range is 600 yards. Smoyer's tank takes a hit on the front glacis, but the Tiger's shell ricochets off the Sherman's sloped armor. Pure luck. DeRiggy returns fire with a modified round. Penetration through the Tiger's frontal armor. The Tiger burns. By noon, Smoyer's platoon has destroyed 5 Tigers and 2 Panthers using modified ammunition. The loss ratio that has haunted American armor forces for 18 months has been reversed. 0 Shermans lost. 7 German heavy tanks destroyed. The engagement is documented in the 32nd Regiment's after-action report, filed on February 24th. The report notes, modified M62 ammunition demonstrated consistent penetration of Tiger I frontal armor at ranges from 300 to 1,100 yards. No ammunition failures or gun barrel damage observed. Recommend immediate theater-wide adoption. The German reaction is documented in captured documents and post-war interviews. Hauptmann Friedrich von Schroeff, commander of the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion, writes in his unit diary on February 25th, "American Shermans are now penetrating our Tigers from the front at ranges previously considered safe. Either they have received new ammunition, or they have modified their tactics. Regardless, our advantage has been neutralized." Lieutenant Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank aces with over 150 tank kills, later recalls in his memoir, "In the final months of the war, we began losing Tigers to frontal hits from Sherman's 76mm guns. This was unheard of in 1944. We assumed the Americans had developed new ammunition. We never imagined it was something as simple as removing the ballistic cap." The data from February and March 1945 tells the story in numbers. Before the modification, Sherman's 76mm tanks achieved frontal penetrations on Tigers and Panthers approximately 12% of the time at ranges beyond 800 yards. After modification, the penetration rate increases to 63%. The average number of rounds required to destroy a Tiger drops from 8.3 to 1.9. The loss ratio reverses from 5 Shermans lost per Tiger destroyed to 1.2 Shermans lost per Tiger destroyed. Lives saved can be calculated. In the 6 weeks from February 23rd to April 6th, 1945, the 3rd Armored Division destroys 127 German heavy tanks while losing 31 Shermans. Historical loss ratios would have predicted 155 Shermans lost. The modified ammunition saves 124 tanks and approximately 620 crewmen. Army Ground Forces Headquarters in Paris receives Colonel Doan's report on February 26th. By March 2nd, modification procedures are distributed to every armored unit in the European theater. By March 15th, an estimated 4,000 Sherman tanks are equipped with modified ammunition. The modification requires no special tools, no factory support, no supply chain. Tank loaders perform the work in field depots using hammers and chisels. The Ordnance Department conducts formal testing at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. Engineers confirm that removing the ballistic cap increases penetration against vertical or near-vertical armor by 28 to 35%, depending on range and impact angle. The cap, designed to prevent shattering against highly sloped armor, actually absorbs impact energy when striking less steeply angled plates. For Tiger and Panther frontal armor, which is sloped but not as steeply as earlier Soviet tank designs, the capless penetrator performs better. On March 22nd, Homer Davis receives a battlefield commission to second lieutenant, an almost unprecedented honor for an enlisted man with no college education. He is awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services, and credited with saving hundreds of American lives. Before we continue with the aftermath, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, but more importantly, I want to ask you to share this video. Stories like Homer Davis's deserve to be remembered. If this story moved you, hit that like button and drop a comment about what innovation means to you. Now let's see what happened after the war. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. By that date, modified M62 ammunition has been used in approximately 2,400 engagements against German heavy armor. The 3rd Armored Division's final casualty reports show that tank crew fatalities in the division dropped by 41% between February and May 1945 compared to the previous 4-month period, despite more intense combat during the Rhine crossing and the drive into Germany. In June 1945, the Army Ordnance Department publishes Technical Manual 1904, modified armor-piercing ammunition for 76mm gun M1. The manual codifies Davis's field modification, though it carefully avoids mentioning that the modification was developed by an enlisted man with no engineering training. The modified ammunition is officially designated M62A1. Post-war analysis reveals that the M62A1 remains in U.S. Army inventory until 1952, when it is superseded by new ammunition designs incorporating tungsten carbide cores. But the principle Davis discovered, that ballistic cap design must be optimized for specific armor geometries, becomes fundamental to armor-piercing ammunition development. Modern armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds used by the M1 Abrams tank employ similar principles. In September 1945, Lieutenant Homer Davis is invited to address the Army Ordnance Association's annual conference in Detroit. He declines. He returns to Amarillo, takes over his father's automotive repair shop, and never speaks publicly about his wartime service. When reporters contact him in 1963 for a magazine article about the 3rd Armored Division, he refuses to be interviewed. "I just did my job," he tells them. "Same as everybody else." But his crewmates remember. In 1988, at a 3rd Armored Division reunion in Colorado Springs, Clarence Smoyer, now 72 years old and a retired postal worker, gives a speech honoring tank crews who served in Europe. He ends with this: "There's a man here today who saved my life. Probably saved it 5 or 6 times. He wasn't an officer, wasn't an engineer, wasn't anybody special, according to the Army. He was just a loader who paid attention and had the guts to try something everybody said was crazy. Homer, I know you don't want the attention, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because of you, I came home. Because of you, a lot of us came home." Homer Davis died in 1994 at the age of 72. His obituary in the Amarillo Globe-News runs 4 paragraphs. It mentions his military service in one sentence. He served in the U.S. Army during World War II. There's no statue, no memorial, no textbook mentions his name. But in the archives of the 3rd Armored Division, in fading after-action reports and casualty statistics, the evidence remains. One man, with no credentials and no authority, changed the course of armored warfare through simple observation and the courage to question expert consensus. Sometimes the most important innovations come not from laboratories or proving grounds, but from ordinary people who refuse to accept that the way things are is the way things must be.